And so you just really you have to figure out who you are, what you're about, and define your definition of success, and run after that. Run after the vision that God's given you for success, and not what you see out there, because often it's false, and their definition of success may not line up with yours. Most of what we see on the internet doesn't line up with a Christian worldview, and so you've just got to know where you're going. Without vision, people will perish, and so one of the things I talk about is that you've got to set a vision, and you've got to know where you're going, and the more detail you can put in that, the better it is. And then you've got to be able to communicate that obviously to those people around you so that they can pull in the same direction. But if you've got a really strong vision, and your vision lines up with your mission, which is to build the kingdom and make disciples, then you're going to be okay.
Welcome to the Break Free Podcast. I am your host, David Mancilla. Today we have with us an excellent entrepreneur and a great person, and somebody that's actually changing the world with his services. Brother, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm great, David. It's good to see you again.
You know, when I met you and I started researching your organization, I quickly realized that if we had more organizations like yours, people wouldn't be in litigation so much, because they will take the right steps before you have to go into a lawsuit situation, right? So
right.
I don't want to spoil for people. Tell me your full name. Where do you live and what do you do for a living?
Yeah, my name is Scott Reece. I am a lawyer and business coach, and I live in Denton, Texas, just north of Dallas.
Wonderful. Business coach and a lawyer. Most lawyers are not business people. Tell me, how did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a business degree. Loved marketing. My dream job when I was 22 would have been to be an advertising executive, but back in '91 there really weren't jobs for that, and so I kind of, through some circumstances, started considering a legal career, and went back. I want to get retooled. It was in the middle of a recession, which is a great time to retool. So I decided that the best opportunity forward for me was law school. So I went to University of Oklahoma and got a law degree, and got out and still was interested in business, and trying to, over the years, I've been doing this 27 years, trying to find where I could really help the most. There were all kinds of ways to make money as a lawyer. Some of them I just didn't feel like I was really helping people. I mean, there may have been an indirect result that helped somebody, but it just wasn't tangible. And so I kind of drifted towards working with smaller businesses and people that I could sit across the table from, and who had real problems that I had real solutions for. And that's kind of where I ended up with it. And then last time I got a W-2 paycheck was 1997.
Wow.
Ever since then, I've been a part owner of a firm. And so I even as an employee, I kind of took ownership and treated it as if it were mine. And so that paid off. And so I was very quickly put on partnership tracks. And the downside to being an owner is that you may not always get paid. Sometimes if the business isn't profitable, you don't get paid. And I learned that the hard way.
Yeah, the ups and downs of life. But if you think about it, people that have a full-time job, and God bless their souls, it's necessary, right? A business without people is not a business.
You bet.
But we owners, business owners, give them that illusion of stability, having a monthly paycheck. But it's just an illusion. We still depend on the ups and downs, and we depend on the Lord for Him to provide to us. Because I remember, listen to this, the first time that I got hired by a multinational telecommunications company, I got hired as a senior architect in my career. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. Everybody wanted to work for this company. I went up like right at the top. And I thought, here I am. I'm going to have a job for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. 6 months later, after I got hired, I was working for a subdivision of that company. The company had over 100,000 employees. My subdivision was about 1,000 people. we were called into the town hall, and they let go of 500 people in one day.
Oh, wow.
Doing some resizing. When I saw that, I'm like, okay, if this company is not stable, there is nothing stable in life. Right?
That's right. Well, the only thing that's stable is the Lord. That's it.
For sure. Scott, your business is unique in the way that you run your law firm and your business coaching. Can you expand a little bit more about that? Because the way you do it is preventive, right? Is not reactive, correct?
Yeah, but yeah, I practiced traditional law for a long time, where people would come in with a problem. We would take a retainer, charge them by the hour to solve that problem. Usually it would end up in litigation and go on for years, and they'd spend tens and tens of thousands of dollars. And I did it that way for a long time because that's how everyone else did it. But it started getting frustrating. This kind of links back to the other question, where how did I become involved in business? Well, it really bugged me that these business owners would keep making mistakes that were easily avoidable. I mean, a lot of it was, had they talked to any lawyer about the contract before they signed it, they wouldn't have signed it, or the paragraph that they ended up in litigation about would have been clarified. And they weren't doing that. And so I had to take a real hard look at myself. Why were they not doing that? Was I doing something wrong? Was I being offensive? Was I rude? Did they not want to deal with me? Was it me? And fortunately, it wasn't me. I decided it was the model that was the problem. And so I had to find a better way. And I kind of started remembering back. I really think the Lord kind of brought these back to my memory, was sitting in my executive suites when I first started my law firm in 2005 with other entrepreneurs that were bootstrapping their businesses and having coffee. And they had the luxury of having coffee with me there in those suites. And so they got to ask me some questions they weren't having to pay for. But I would ask them, why aren't you using lawyers to do these things? And they would say they just couldn't afford lawyers. So I had one problem, was that legal services weren't affordable. So I knew I had to find an affordable way to provide the service. And the other thing was I had to do away with this hourly billing, because they would look at me like every time they thought of me, they'd think of money flying out of their pocket. And so it was having the opposite result that I wanted. I wanted them to think about me and think, wow, I should call Scott because he'll have something smart to say about this and it might help me. Mm-hmm. But they weren't. They were thinking, I'd rather Google it, flip a coin, dial a friend, anything but call Scott, because Scott's going to cost me a lot of money. And so we created an on-demand system so that you could become proactive with the legal side of your business. I like to say that having the right information at the right time is often the difference between success and failure. David, an example would be if I were driving by your house and saw smoke coming out of the roof and called you and said, David, there's smoke coming out of your roof. I think your house is on fire. You can immediately call your family and the fire department and get them out and possibly save your house. If the same thing happened, I drove by, saw the smoke, and called you the next day and said, David, I saw smoke coming out of your house. How'd that work out? Well, it's too late. Your house is already burned down. Whatever damage happened, we can't go back and fix it. And it's often that way in business because things are happening very quickly, especially at the small business level, where deals are happening, contracts are being signed, things are being said that maybe can't be taken back. And it happens so fast, and they don't have the ability to text their lawyer and say, hey, this is happening, what should I do? And so we created this system where they could do that, and it's our access plan. And so now we've been able to help hundreds of entrepreneurs get that on-demand access so that they could make decisions with the right information at the right time. And that's what we do.
You touched so many great points. Like, I run 7 businesses, and my primary company is constantly requiring lawyer assistance. Mm-hmm. And I had that mindset. Usually it was, we have to call the lawyer again. There goes $5,000. There goes $10,000, right? So people are afraid, and then they don't use the services, and then they end up losing hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars when they get into a lawsuit situation.
Yep.
So you provide a retainer. How does it work? Like, is it a monthly service where, like, it's a recurring business model where they know they can access you or your staff? How does it work?
Yeah, it's a monthly subscription. There's 3 different levels. Right now in 2023, it ranges from $650 a month to $32.50 a month, depending on the size and volume of your business. But kind of how it works is like, this is an example today. One of our clients, it's actually a name that many people would recognize in the online space, and they had a contract they were going to sign with a branding company, and they emailed it in to their access support concierge, and it's just a question of, there's a paragraph in this contract that is bugging me. Could I talk to somebody about it? So I called them, got on the phone. They were driving down the road, actually. So I had the contract in front of me. They said, it's this paragraph. So I went to it. We read it together. And they're like, I feel like it's contradictory. And I said, I agree. You need to call them back and tell them this paragraph doesn't make sense. It contradicts this other thing, and they need to fix it before you could sign it. So they were able to then call the other party, say, hey, this is what my lawyer says, fix the contract. And so we're expecting a new version tomorrow that will hopefully be signable. So we don't want to kill deals. We want to fix deals, make them go forward. But there's some things that just have to be written correctly, because if they're not, you're just getting off on the wrong foot. And so that's basically how it works, is that we're just walking through life with them, jumping on phone calls, looking at documents, sending them back to them, fixing them if we can, creating custom documents, setting up legal structures, and then just giving this ongoing legal coaching and business coaching so that they can make decisions that will help them grow and scale their business in a protected way.
That's amazing. It's almost like having a lawyer on staff, but without having to pay the full price of a lawyer.
That's what I say. That's what I say.
That's amazing. How did you come up with this idea? I mean, this is incredible.
Back in 2012, when I was really ruminating on this idea, it was kind of the subscription stuff was happening. One of them that kind of came to my attention was the Dollar Shave Club. The Dollar Shave Club was running. They had a really funny video commercial out. It was really funny. Everyone was one of those viral videos, and it caught my attention that, wow, you can sell razors that way. And then I had some clients that were business coaches, and they were selling these monthly packages. I'm like, well, if you can buy razors on a subscription, and if you can buy business coaching on a subscription, why couldn't you buy your legal services that way? Mm-hmm. And so I started looking for a business coach. I went through a couple. I found a couple of really good people and good coaches, but they were more interested in working with me on my passion and my purpose in life, which there's definitely a place for that. But I'm like, no, I've got a vision for this idea. Can you give me a map, at least get me from A to, I don't know, G? You don't have to go to Z, but can you give me this far? And they just, no, that's not how we work. But I found a coach that could. He had helped another friend of mine. He'd helped Clay Stairs, another business coach, go from being a school teacher to being a life and business coach very quickly. And I was so impressed. I'm like, well, if you can do that, you could probably help me. He only worked with 10 entrepreneurs at a time, and he had an opening. And so in August of 12, he took me on and started helping me build out what is now the Access Plan.
That is beautiful. So you've been doing it since 2012 then?
Yes, we're almost an 11-year overnight success.
It's good to mention that, because most people think of us successful entrepreneurs as overnight success, but they don't see the pain that we went through, and the prayers and the fasting, if you will, to figure it out, and all the pitfalls and the trials that we have to go through, right?
It's been great. I mean, you got to enjoy the journey. But I really thought when I started this back then that within one calendar year, I would break 100. I'd have over 100 clients. That was what I thought, and I was very wrong. Some people loved it, but there wasn't anyone looking for it. And so, as I'm working with other people and their businesses, and they're trying to find new revenue streams and things, it's like, try to find a problem that people are already looking for answers for. Because I didn't do that. I found a problem they needed solved, but no one really was looking for this answer. They weren't Googling, I need a subscription lawyer, or how do I pay a lawyer every month? They just weren't doing that 10 years ago. Now people are looking a little more for that. And I'll get phone calls for, hey, we want to have a relationship with a lawyer on a regular basis. Now that's happening, but I had to kind of create that market. And so it's not the recommended path, it's a long path. If you can find a problem that they're already aware they have and they're looking for a solution, and you can step in and be that solution, I highly suggest you take that route rather than trying to create the market, because it can be a little bumpy.
It is bumpy, but regardless of what you choose, there's always problems, right? There's always troubles and things that you need to figure out, right?
Yeah, and I was fortunate because like I said, I had a traditional law firm. I mean, we were on track in 2012, 2013 to do 7 figures, and I had a fairly large firm, and we had people billing, and it was going well. And so I was able to pull back a little from that side to focus on this. And so as the two started to meet, then in the middle, then I was able to start backing up on the billable stuff, to where now it's very rare that I have a client that we bill by the hour or have any litigation for. It's almost all the preventative side, or focused on asset protection and estate preservation for our business owners, which is also a very important thing.
That is fantastic, Scott.
Yeah.
Tell me about your faith. Like, we started this podcast just giving praise to the Lord because He provides. He's the one that creates the wealth and gives the wealth to His people according to His will, not our will. How do you come up into this light that I can see it all around you? By the way.
No, and I was very fortunate to grow up in a Christian home. My parents had me in church from very young, but where I really came to a saving knowledge of Jesus was at a vacation Bible school when I was 8. Got invited to go to one. It was down the street. It was a kid it was my soccer coach's church, actually. And so I went down there, and they started talking about Jesus and, are you saved? And you need to get water baptized. And I had lots of questions. So I ended up with the pastor asking a lot of questions about that. And I believed firmly that Jesus Christ was the one and only Son of God that was sent to earth to die for our sins, and that He died on the cross and rose again 3 days later. But I hadn't been water baptized, which isn't a requirement to get saved, but it's something that I saw that as an obedience I wanted to do. And so I went home and started having conversations with my parents about what had happened. And they're like, you were baptized when you were a baby at the Methodist church. I'm like, well, I don't remember that. I'm not sure that could mean that much to me. So we then have a meeting with our pastor, Reverend Bill Mason. And I said, hey, this is what happened. And he said, I totally understand what you're doing. I'll call my friend at the Baptist church, see if we can use their baptistry, and let's go over there and we'll water baptize you. And so we made that appointment. I went over there. My parents went with me and got baptized. My grandparents went with me and got baptized.
Wow.
And that was the start of my spiritual journey. And like my business path, it's not always been smooth sailing. There's been some bumps in the road. A lot of people kind of make to me a kind of a false promise that if you walk with Jesus, everything's going to be smooth. And it's really the opposite of that. There's a way through the rough patches with Christ, but it's often you're going to have trials and tribulations, and so you got to be ready for those. But so through that, I mean, I've developed some really strong Christian friend relationships. I've still got one of my friends called me last week for my birthday that is a 40+ year Christian brother that helped keep me accountable and push me forward in growth. And then it's just been a fantastic journey with Christ. And you asked me where this came from. I'm not smart enough to create this on my own. It was divine inspiration that there had to be a better way to do this. And then the Lord led me to the people that could help me piece it together, and have led me to people along the way that could help me add things to it and make it better. The Lord is very faithful and has been my provider. I've always had, I've never had any real anxiety in life. I don't worry about things. I've always believed that the Lord would take care of me. And He has. He's been so faithful through I've had this firm 18 years. He's been so faithful that every month there's been a way to pay the bills. We've never not been able to keep the lights on at home. Everything has always, we've had enough. And lately the Lord's really blessed us, and we're prospering and able to help others. And that's the thing. A lesson I learned a few years back is that enough isn't enough, because if you just have enough to pay your own bills, then it's very hard for you to bless other people. And so, I thank the Lord that He's blessed us in a way that we're able to help other people and try to make an impact for the kingdom.
You know what? You touched a great point. As entrepreneurs, you know that you are supposed to grow exponentially. I'm tired of this doctrine that, especially in the Christian community, that says, you're supposed to be, they confuse humbleness with being poor. And
Yes.
the Lord never sent us to this world to be poor. They sent us to the world to be humble, right? The Lord didn't say, don't make money. The Lord says, don't fall in love with money, which is very different, right? And if you look at the secular world, they make money for themselves, and that's why they keep making more money, because there is never enough money to satisfy your soul, because your soul is looking for something different. It's looking for fulfillment that can only come from the Creator. And I tell you this because that's the trap I fell into in my life. When I started making money back in 2009, 2010, slowly I kept forgetting about my faith, and I kept focusing on my own abilities. And the more money that I made, the more money that I wanted, the more influence that I got, the more influence that I needed. So, you will get this high where, I reached $1 million or whatever, right? And then you will be, okay, I have the whole world set now. And then 6 months later, that wasn't enough. So then I will put in, 17 hours of work a day, and I will forget my family. And I kept doing this horrible cycle of making meaningless money until I actually had a heart attack. Can you imagine? Like, the Lord had to actually allow for me to go down in my health, because otherwise I was going to lose my life, literally. And then I started to realize, okay, this is not the right thing. So I went back and I realized, okay, no, I still have to make money, but for different reasons, right? To bless others, to grow, to provide employment, to add value to society. And you're a clear example of that. And another thing that I see in you is that I don't see any signs of anxiety or depression. I suffer a lot with that, because the minute that I left my faith and I tried to do things on my own, thinking that I was the one that was creating everything, anxiety kicks in. And you set yourself insane goals, and when you don't reach them, you think you're not good enough. And it's a down spiral, right? How do you manage to stay away from that temptation? Because being in business is very tempting to start thinking that you are your own boss and that you are the one that creates all the wealth, right?
Yeah, I agree. It's hard, and there's definitely times where I will catch myself falling into that, and reading my own headlines and thinking that I'm something special. I always have there's always a way he'll get your attention. I've also been married 32 years, and so if the Holy Spirit doesn't get my attention, my wife will.
That's true.
So that's been very helpful. I can't imagine walking through all that I've gone through by myself, but having her alongside of me to keep me grounded, and because she's not impressed with me for being on podcasts or being on stages or whatever we're doing. It doesn't impress her, and so she wants to see that I'm being a good husband, I'm being a good father to my boys and to my daughter-in-law, and that I'm setting the example, and that I'm participating in church. And so she keeps me very grounded in that way. But it can be very hard to remember, because he's gifted us with the ability to do these things. So you just have to constantly remember, and the more I'm in the Word, the easier that is. And that's the thing I have to kind of remember, is that I'll get busy being busy. And if I don't remember to spend time with Him, that's when you fall in that trap of, man, I'm pretty great. Don't really need anybody else.
Yeah. And the other side of that same trap is comparing yourself to somebody else's success, right? I did that so much that I thought I was a failure, because always there were people that were doing better than me.
Yeah, and that one's really hard, especially in now when we're looking at social media fairly often, and it's just so in your face, and it's very hard to tell what's true and what's not, because most people aren't being really transparent on social media or the internet, and so you get false comparisons, so that makes it even harder, and so you have to figure out who you are, what you're about, and define your definition of success, and run after the vision that God's given you for success, and not what you see out there, because often it's false, and their definition of success may not line up with yours. Most of what we see on the internet doesn't line up with a Christian worldview, and so you've just got to know where you're going. Without vision, people will perish, and so one of the things I talk about is that you've got to set a vision, and you've got to know where you're going, and the more detail you can put in that, the better it is. And then you've got to be able to communicate that obviously to those people around you so that they can pull in the same direction. But if you've got a really strong vision, and your vision lines up with your mission, which is to build the kingdom and make disciples, then you're going to be okay. And so you just got to keep measuring. You got to measure your business against your vision, and your vision against your spiritual mission. If you do that, you'll be able to get yourself back in line where you need, and then surround yourself with counsel. Right, you got to have friends, and like I said, a wife, and you can't do this Lone Ranger thing. I've known a few people that claim to be Christians that don't go to church. There aren't any part of a local church, and I think that's a really hard trap, because you can't do this by yourself. You will run in those two pitfalls you've talked about. You'll start reading your own headlines, and you'll start comparing. Then you'll start comparing yourself to other people, and you don't measure up. And so you've got to have people around you that are walking the same thing you are, and that can see those problems and be able to lift you up and pray for you. And to me, that's the secret of the Christian life.
You are so right. All these things that I told you that I went through is because I left the church. I left the church for over 20 years. And, once you're by yourself, watching a preacher online is not the same. I mean, keep doing that too, for sure, but, you have to congregate. You have to be in the body of Christ, When I came back to my senses, actually, I came back last year. It was recent, very recent. And when the pastor that used me to get me back into my faith, he told me, if you sever your hand from your rest of your body or your leg, it quickly dies because there is no blood flow. So the body is filled with parts, and those parts have to be united. Otherwise, they die outside. And that's exactly what happened to me. I died thinking that I was going to be able to survive by myself. It's not like that, right?
Yeah. What's the analogy that Jesus used in the Bible? Is that if you cut off a branch from a tree, that it will wither. You can't be cut off. You've got to be you got to be grafted in to that tree. And it's it's hard in a busy life. There's lots of stuff going on, if you're an entrepreneur, for sure. But man, I can't imagine doing it. It was so hard in 2020 when church wasn't available like it was before, and everyone kind of got in the habit of watching it online, and it was a rough time. I'm so glad that that's back to normal, and everyone's back worshiping together. And if you're not, I would encourage you to get back into the body, and if you're physically able, do more than just watch online.
Thank you so much for that, Scott. Question: What has been the toughest situation you ever been in your business life, and how did you pull yourself out of that?
It probably was before. Well, no, I guess it was in 2014. In 2014, so we were 8 years in. We were really doing well, I thought, The firm was doing well. I had a couple of lawyers, several staff people, a marketing director, an in-house bookkeeper. It was going well, and we were about to hit our first 7-figure year. And I lost a young lawyer with us, left. The marketing director took another job. Suddenly we were kind of retracting a little bit, and a little retraction is okay, because if you're a small business owner, when you have some retraction, your payroll goes down, and that can go straight to your bottom line. So that was okay. But I went on a vacation the last week of May of 2014 with my family. Took my wife and 2 boys to California. We're going to go to Disneyland and Universal Studios and do all that stuff. And so we get there and spend a great few days, and then we're standing in line at Universal Studios, and I hadn't looked at my phone in 3 days. And I thought, I'm going to just look at my phone, check my email. And so I looked at my email. This was on a Sunday evening, and looked at the email, and there's an email from the lawyer that was the senior. He was doing all of my, he was the one that was enabling me to build this plan, because he was doing a lot of the litigation work. And it was his resignation. And attached to that was the paralegal's resignation. And here's the list of clients I'm taking with me.
Oof.
And so, yeah, it was a gut punch. And the lawyer and someone I'd known for 20 plus years, had trusted, tried to call him, and he wouldn't even have, there's no conversation to be had. He just said that we're just, let's don't go talk about the past. We're just moving forward. And I'm like, I can't move forward until we talk about the past. That never happened. So I had a decision to make in the middle of this vacation. Do I fly back to Dallas and come fight for this, for my law firm, and ruin my vacation? Or do I finish the vacation with my boys and wife and then come back and take care of the problem? And I decided the right thing to do was finish the vacation. And so I woke up early the next morning and called the office, and thought that my receptionist would be there. She was an 18-year-old young person, and she got scared when no one else showed up. And so she left. So I was down to nobody. So then I got online and found a virtual receptionist, got them connected to my phone system. So I had at least had that answering the phones. So there would be someone answering the phones. Finished my vacation, came back in on Wednesday, the 2nd of June, and it was just me in my 2,500 square feet, and had to figure out what to do with files leaving, going out the door. How do I do this? And it was hard. There was a real blessing, right? This was 2014. So we're about 2 years into the access plan. And so I'd built up some recurring revenue. Now I wasn't where I wanted to be, but I had recurring revenue coming in, and my payroll just went to zero. Mm-hmm. So I had recurring revenue coming in, zero payroll. Now I had to do a lot more work than I was doing before, but that put me in a pretty good spot. And so in prayer, like, what do I do? Ended up having a lady from the church come over, and she started answering the phones and set up my front desk for me for a week or so while I kind of figured out what to do. A client ended up offering me a suite in their office because they needed a bigger suite place, and they took my space. So my rent went to zero. And so the Lord just started orchestrating the steps, and I thought, okay, this is going to be all right. And so then I started to hired a new paralegal, hired a couple of interns, and we seemed to be doing okay in the fall of 2014. And then as we approached December, my parents were taking my family and my brother's family on a cruise. We're going to leave the 19th of December and be gone over Christmas. So I was excited to get to that point and take a vacation. Although I'd already had a bad experience with the vacation, right? So I get to the week before that, and my paralegal comes in, and she says, Scott, I hate to do this, but I have got a job offer from a law firm that I'd interviewed with back in August, and it's just the perfect job for me. And I really just need to take it, because working for me, every day's a new day. You do all kinds of different things. And this is going to be very focused, very niche. And she was like, I need to do that. And so I'm like, well, what would it take to keep you here? Offer her more money. And she said, well, let me go home and talk to my husband, and I'll let you know tomorrow. She took the job. She said she would stay through the end of the year and get me lined out. I was thankful for that. But then the next day, one of the interns comes in, and she has received a job offer that was a job offer she couldn't turn down. And so I'm back to basically nobody. Go on the cruise, come back, and have to start over again. And wow. So slowly rehired. By May of 2016, I had everyone, even my best friend actually, who was in construction at the time, was in a slow season. He came to work for me for a little bit, and that was very helpful. And by May of 2016, I had a staff back up. I had a good solid receptionist in place, a good paralegal in place, some contract people in place, and we were able to deliver the work efficiently. And then by January 17, I moved back over to my main space because I needed space again, and everything kept going. But it was a really hard season of trying to figure out what was I doing wrong. And I don't know what I learned. I couldn't tell you what the lesson was other than perseverance. I don't think it wasn't that I was treating people wrong. I wasn't doing anything to cause it. It just was one of those circumstances that there was just kind of a mess around me, and I had to just keep moving forward. And because I kept moving forward, everything eventually came back, and now we're able to do more revenue with a much smaller team than we had than before. And so I wouldn't have built it the way I've got it now if that hadn't happened. One of the problems with law firms is lawyers can't sign non-competes. Clients control their files; they can go wherever they want to go, and so there's not a great way to protect yourself there. And so there's just some risk there, and I've been able to, because of some systems we built. The way we've been using lawyers mostly is they don't have complete access to everything. They're doing more support role. I'm doing the relationship role. It's scaled very well. But it was a painful season for sure. I wouldn't wish it on my enemy, but I grew a lot through it as just as a man, and then as a business person. It was hard.
And Scott, just the persistence part, right? The perseverance, and also the trusting. When the Lord takes us through these deserts, you come out stronger, because this is your moment of test. You could have just said, I just go get a job. I'm maybe going to make twice as much money, and we don't have to deal with staff and stuff, right? What about the clients you're serving now? And what about the clients you will get in the future? But you were persistent and you were obedient. When we look at the Old Testament stories, it probably was going to take 40 days of walking for Israel to go to their homeland, and it took them 40 years. Why? Because they were stubborn and they were not following instructions. The tests will be there, because I believe the only way to grow in life, Scott, is by those trials and tribulations. When everything is going great, it's awesome, but you are not growing. It's very hard to grow in that situation. But when the Lord starts putting roadblocks here and there, or you just go into a desert. COVID was a desert, right? The 2008 financial crisis was another big desert. It was a general desert, and a lot of people got tested, and a lot of people failed the exam. For me in my life, if you look at it, most of the stuff that I suffered through, I created my own desert by my misbehavior. But I also had a lot of those deserts that come directly from the Lord, saying, okay, I'm going to test you. Are you still loyal to me? Are you still believing that I am the one that gives? Or are you making yourself your own God? Do you believe in the promise, even though he's not here? Do you believe in the promise, even though you feel completely abandoned and lonely? Exactly the way that happened to you. And the problem is that if you don't pass the test will repeat itself again, and it's going to be the same test with a different color, but it's going to keep going over and over until you finally pass it, because the Lord loves you so much that he will always be there for you to get you to the next level, because you're in this process of refinement. We're becoming Christ-like every day, and this sanctification process requires hard work, isn't it?
It sure does.
Scott, it's already 45 minutes after we've been talking, and your life is so incredibly amazing, but I want to respect your time. Scott, I'm going to ask you one last question before we finish the podcast. If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write in it?
What would I write on it as a business owner?
Yeah.
Yeah, for my business, I would write on it, is your business shatterproof?
Ooh. Deep. That's a good question to have. Now, as a person, what would you write in it?
Is your life shatterproof?
You know what? I know mine is now, and I know yours is now. But for the audience, I know there is a lot of people that might not be people of faith, and that's okay. You're on your path of discovering the light. Mm-hmm. Are you shatterproof? Wow.
Yep. The only way to be shatterproof in your life is to have your salvation through Jesus Christ. Otherwise, you're not shatterproof.
And that's your way to your passport of heaven, isn't it? Because we're not citizens of this world anymore.
He is the way, the truth, and the life.
Beautiful. Scott, thank you so much for your time. If people would like to hire your services, get in touch with you, ask you more questions about entrepreneurship, where can they find you?
Yeah, if they will go to REIBLAW.com, REIBLAW.com/break free, then they can download an ebook to tell them how to fix their business and make it shatterproof. Just go to that page. You can also find me at the Scott Reeb on Instagram, and we do several legal tip reels every week. We're very consistent at that, and then if you want to reach out and message me directly, then I'll respond.
Wonderful. Scott, thank you so much for your wisdom, for shining the light in these dark days. God bless, and have a beautiful rest of the week.
Thanks, Dave.
That's all for today's episode of the Break Free Podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.